everyone. Welcome to NIOS Studio. I am Dr. Nidhi Singh and today we will be talking about agriculture in India. Now, as we all know, agriculture is the backbone of Indian economy, and we can see many people who are engaged in agricultural practices. So, today we will be discussing about agriculture, types of farming, factors affecting agriculture, characteristics of agriculture in India, major crops of India and problems faced by Indian agriculture. Now, as we know that it is the main type of activity, economic activity that majority of the Indians perform, and this is the backbone of our economy, and 70% of population earns its livelihood from this, and it provides food and raw material for agro based industries also. Now, what are the different factors that have resulted in this sort of agriculture in India, and we have lots of varieties of crops here. So, what are the main factors that are responsible for helping us to grow so many crops in our countries? First is the geographical position. In the last lesson, we studied about its physiography, the biodiversity also. So, the biodiversity, we have different variety of biodiversity also because of the geographical position of our country. So, it applies to crops also, and because of this geographical condition, that is, it lies in the subtropical zone, we have a variety of crops that we can grow in our country from north to south and from east to west. Another important factor that is responsible for this variety of crops is physiography. We have plains, we have plateaus, we have mountains, we have coastal plains, and all these we have hills also. So, all these different types of physiographic features help us in growing variety of crops that we have in our country. Then a different kind of soil type that we have. Some areas have alluvial soil, some have laterite soil, some have mountainous soil. In the last lesson we also discussed about soils. Then we have black soil, red soil. All these types of soil, they also help us in growing variety of crops that we have in India. So, we have advantageous position because of these three reasons that we have. Now, the other factors that are responsible for letting us grow a variety of crops are availability of irrigation, then use of machinery and modern agriculture inputs. In the picture you can see irrigation, first picture shows the irrigation, then modern agriculture inputs like tractors through which they can prepare the field and sow and all those harvest the crops, etc. Then you have a picture of spraying of pesticides, etc. So, all these facilities also, these factors also help us in growing large variety of crops in our country. Now, we will be discussing about types of farming. So, since we have large variety of crops, we also have different types of farming practices that we follow in our country, and this is based on nature and purpose of farming. So, according to that, we have four major types of farming. One is subsistence and commercial farming. Second is intensive and extensive farming, third is plantation farming, and fourth is mixed farming. We will be discussing it in detail now. The first one is subsistence farming. This is a farming which is practiced by majority of farmers in our country, and it is the type of farming where farming is done for own consumption. That means the farmer and its household grows the crops for their own consumption throughout the year. The land holdings are small and fragmented, and cultivation technique is primitive and simple. So, the crops that are grown here are cereals, then oil seeds, pulses, vegetables and sugarcane, etc. This is one of the examples you can see of subsistence farming, where the farmer is harvesting the wheat crop, and this is used for various for the whole of the year for their own consumption. Now, another type of farming within the first category is commercial farming. Here the most of the produce, as the name suggests, is used for commercial purposes. That means it is sold in the market for money, and the cultivation technique here is which involves irrigation facilities, chemical fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides and high yielding variety seeds, etc. So, lots of modern agriculture inputs are used for increasing the productivity. So, it can be the product can be sold to the market, and the crops grown using this kind of farming are cotton, jute, sugarcane and groundnut, etc. These are all commercial farming crops. Now, you can see some of the pictures of some of the commercial crops. The long jute fibers can be seen hanging and clubbed together. Then groundnut is also a commercial crop, and that is, you can see that also. So, these are some of the commercial crops that are grown in India. Now, another type of farming, that is intensive and extensive farming. Here the difference between the two, that the intensive and extensive is basically in the terms of amount of production per unit of land. So, the amount of produce that takes place per unit of land is determines what is intensive and what is extensive farming. Now, in extensive farming, there is use of large patch of land for cultivation. Then the total production is high and the area is also large, and the per unit area production is low. The area is large in extensive farming, but per unit of area is, production is lower. Now, in intensive farming, on the other hand, high production per unit of land. That means, one unit of land produces large amount of crops here as compared to the extensive farming, and the example is for intensive farming is Kerala. Now, third comes the plantation farming. In this kind of farming, there are large estates, that means large areas where single cash crop is grown for sale, and the crops grown are tea, coffee, rubber, banana and spices. These are some of the crops that are grown as a plantation farming, and they have a large area dedicated to these crops. And these were first introduced, this type of farming was first introduced in India by Britishers in 19th century. Now, you can see the some of the example, this picture shows the tea plantation that takes place, and in the first picture you can see vast area covered under tea plantation, the tea estate you can see, and in the second picture you can see a female laborer, she is picking up the tea the tea leaves from the plant, and then it is collected in the basket, and then it is taken to the area where it is stored. Now, another type of farming is mixed farming. Here, raising of crops and rearing of animals is done simultaneously. That means, in the same land area, the crops are also grown and rearing of animals are also there. I mean, animals are also kept for different purposes. So, this is known as mixed farming, and this is economically better than any other farming. Why? Because here crops are also growing as well as animals are also growing. So, if the crop fails by chance due to some unavoidable circumstances and or unexpected circumstances, at least the animal which is being reared can be used for their economic purpose. They can sell their those animals, or they can use them for their own consumption. So, at least some amount of they have some thing on which they can bank upon for their economy or for their earning. Now, we must have heard about green revolution and all those things. So, what is green revolution? Some of the terminologies that are there you should know about when you are studying agriculture in India. One is green revolution. So, green revolution, as the name suggests, it refers to increased production of crops, some of the crops, and it means the major technological breakthrough based on one, improved seeds of high yielding varieties, second, adequate and assured supply of water for irrigation, and then third, increased and appropriate application of chemical fertilizers. So, these three points were taken care of while increasing the productivity of the crops, and some of the major crops that were involved in green revolution was, one was wheat, and then to some extent it was rice also. Now, white revolution, what can you make out from the picture? What do we mean by white revolution? Can you just guess? And then, as the name suggests, yes, it is about remarkable increase in milk production. It is white in color, milk production, and then its related products like butter, cheese and all those things. And this was done with the establishment of a national milk grid and by removing regional and seasonal imbalances in milk production. So, this is known as white revolution, which is related to milk production and its related products. Now, can you make out what we are going to talk about? This is another picture. This. Now, can you make out what are we going to talk about next? Yes, catch of fisheries and related things, I mean related food products like crabs, lobsters and all. Now, this is known as blue revolution. So, blue revolution means big increase in catch of freshwater and marine water fish, and it also includes crabs and lobsters, etc. Now, I will show you another picture. Can you make out what we are going to talk about? Yes, it is related to poultry, I mean production of eggs and chickens and all those things, right? It is related to poultry, and what is it known as? It is known as yellow revolution. So, why? Because maybe the egg yolk is yellow, so maybe it is known as yellow revolution, and it is remarkably steady. It means remarkably steady and assured supply of poultry products. So, this was yellow revolution. Now, similarly, we have pink revolution. Can you make out by looking at the picture? What do we mean by pink revolution? It refers to what? Yes, it refers to considerable rise in production of apples, especially in Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. Now, we will be switching over to some of the salient features of Indian agriculture. This means some of the important features of Indian agriculture. So, one important feature is its subsistence in nature. That means subsistence agriculture is practiced here. There is pressure of population on agriculture. We have large number of population dependent on agriculture. Third is mechanization of farming. We have mechanized the farming. Then we have dependency on monsoon. So, still in spite of the fact that we have gone through green revolution, we have done lots of efforts in assuring irrigation and water supply, still large number of farmers are dependent on monsoon for irrigation purposes. We have variety of crops that we can grow in India, and there is predominance of food crops. That means majority of the crops that are grown are food crops, and there are seasonal patterns of agriculture. I mean, in summer season or in we have different sorts of types of crops are grown. In winter season we have different types of crops grown, and then in between these two seasons we have different types of crops that are grown here. So, there is a seasonal pattern. Depending upon the season we have different varieties of crops that are grown in India. Now, the table shows some of the major crops of India. One is food grain, and that are crops mainly used for human consumption, and rice, wheat, etc. are some of the major crops. Second is commercial crops, which are mainly grown for commercial purposes and for sale, and these are cotton, jute, sugarcane, tobacco and oilseeds, etc. Third is plantation crops, that is mainly grown as plantation. Large states are there and it is grown like that, and the examples we have seen earlier, right now we saw those examples: tea, coffee, coconut, rubber, etc. And then horticulture crops are also there, which includes vegetables, fruits, etc. and fruits and vegetables of different types are the example of it. Now, we will be switching over to some of the major crops of India. Can you make out by looking at the picture which crop is this? Faintly, anyone, I mean, if you can make out, if you have seen it somewhere. Yes, it is rice crop, and it is also known as paddy, and it is largely grown in India across the whole country. I mean, we have it is grown in some of the very wet areas of India, but in some of the drier parts also we grow paddy or rice with the help of irrigation, good irrigation facilities. We grow it in mountain valleys and all. So, coastal areas also. So, rice is the staple diet of India, and we grow it. You can see this picture is widely, you can see in the monsoon region, during monsoon season you can see this. I mean, this is the picture you can see in many of the areas of India, females, I mean ladies sowing the rice seedlings. These are rice seedlings, and men and women, they are planting the rice seedlings in the fields. Now, rice, as we all know, it is a summer crop and it is also known as kharif crop, and 1/3 of cultivated area is covered by rice, and it is used for food or consumption for more than half of the population. The geographical conditions, can you make out some of the geographical conditions by looking at the map also, or otherwise also where all it's grown? Yes, it's grown in hot and humid climate, and the rainfall, it requires lots of rainfall, that is 150 to 300 centimeters of rainfall, and the soil should be fertile, deep clay and loamy soil, and cheap labor is required for rice, because you have to plant the rice, seedlings you have to plant, and then you have to grow the crops, and then you have to harvest. So, planting seedlings is a very tedious task, and it requires lots of patience. So, it says that therefore, you can see lots of female workers or female farmers or laborers growing, I mean planting the rice seedlings, because it requires lots of patience. Now, look at the picture. Can you make out which crop is this? Any faint, any guesses? Yes, it's wheat crop, and we have all seen wheat crop somewhere or other, maybe in our locality, and say some of the festivals also we use this wheat crops, wheat plant for different purposes, and during our festivals, some of the festivals also. Now, some of the geographical conditions that are required for wheat cultivation is, it requires cool climate, and the rainfall should be between 75 to 100 centimeters, that is it requires cooler climate as compared to rice, and then it requires lesser amount of rainfall. So, it is a winter crop, and which is also known as rabi crop. And the soil required here, type of soil, wheat crop is well drained, fertile, loamy and clayey loamy soil, and less of labor is required as compared to rice crop. Now, another type of food grain is millets. What are millets? These are short duration kharif crop, and these are coarse grain crops, and they are used for food and fodder. Some of the examples are jowar, bajra, ragi, kora, kodon, kutki, haraka, and etc. These are some of the millets that are grown in India. Now, you can see in these pictures, these are some of the millets. I mean, corn is there, ragi is there. So, these some of the bajra, all these things are there, which are known as millets. Now, millets require a high temperature, that is 27 to 32 degrees centigrades of temperature. Rainfall should be between 50 to 100 centimeter, that is it's a dry land crops, you can say. Inferior alluvial or loamy kind of soil is required, and less labor is required for this. North and south, different parts, or the drier parts of North and South India have this sort of millets or this sort of food crop. Now, another crop is grain is pulses. Pulses are leguminous and rich in protein, and it is very good for health. So, all of us should have lots of pulses in our daily diet. So, now you do not need to refuse dal or pulses in your diet. So, whenever it is given, you should have it. It is very good source of protein. It is used in crop rotation also, because it fixes nitrogen, and large variety of pulses are found in or grown in India. Now, you can see in the picture, this is so many variety of pulses are grown in India. Some are gram, tur, arhar, urad, moong, masoor or lentil, kulthi, horse gram, matar, etc. So, these are those whole variety of pulses that are grown in India. We have lots of varieties. Now, the geographical conditions required for pulses are temperature that ranges between mild, that is mild cool, that is 20 degree to 25 degree centigrade. Rainfall, it requires drier climate and lesser amount of rainfall, and then it requires loamy soil. Now, we will be switching over to commercial crops, as the name suggests, and we have discussed it earlier also. Commercial crops are grown for sale, and grown on a large at a large scale for sale purpose mainly. And these are mainly one of the important commercial crops is sugarcane, and it is a kharif crop. We all like chewing sugarcane sticks, right? And it is very sweet, and India has a large area devoted to sugarcane cultivation, and lots of different products are made out of sugarcane juice, and we all like sugar, I guess, in different food that we use or that we have. So, sugarcane is a kharif crop, and it is a main source of sugar, gur and khandasari, and it also acts as raw material for alcohol and paper, And the geographical conditions required for sugarcane production or growing of sugarcane is hot and humid climate, and it requires a little larger amount of rainfall, that is 75 to 150 centimeters. Deep, rich, loamy, heavy manured and fertilized soil is required for this, and it requires lots of labor. So, it is a labor intensive commercial crop. Now, as you can see in the map, some of the areas that are where sugarcane is grown, it is grown in some of the parts of northern India, UP, Uttarakhand, etc., Haryana, Punjab, and in southern India also we have lots of places where sugarcane cultivation is done. This is a sugarcane crop. You can make out now, if you do not know that this is a sugarcane, now you can make out that this is a sugarcane crop. And I think we all love sugar in different forms. Now, can you guess which crop is this? Can you make out? Yes, it's cotton crop, and this is the picture of cotton field, that is, and how this is, see how cotton grows, I mean in the pods, in a form of pods in the plant, cotton crop. It is also a commercial crop, and cotton is the most important fiber crop that is grown in India, and it is a kharif crop, and geographical conditions show that a uniform high temperatures are required for cotton cultivation, and rainfall between 50 to 100 centimeter. That means it does not require lots of rainfall. So, it can be grown in drier parts also. The type of soil which is required is black soil, and black soil is a very commonly known as cotton soil. Black soil is commonly related to cotton, and black soil is the most important type of soil that where cotton is grown, and alluvial soil, in alluvial soil also cotton can be grown. It requires cheap and efficient labor because you have to pick the cotton from the cotton pods from the plant, and it requires lots of labor. Now, can you make out which crop is this? Yes, it is a very common picture in some of the Hindi movies also, or Bollywood movies that we call, and you can see the actor and actress having some songs and children running around across these fields. These are the mustard seeds, I mean mustard flowers of mustard seed, and this is the mustard crop that is growing, and it is a beautiful picture if you see the large stretch of mustard crops growing. So, this is one of the commercial crops, and it comes under the oil seeds, and we extract oil from mustard seeds, and this is the largest area in production of oil seeds in the world, and India has the largest area and production of oil seeds in the world, and its uses are for food, for manufacturing of hydrogenated oils, paints, soaps, etc., and groundnut is one of the most important commercial crop oil seed apart from mustard. Now, plantation crops, as discussed earlier, these plantation crops are grown for in a large stretch of land, and mainly for selling purpose and for different purposes. So, plantation crop is one of the most important plantation crops of India is tea, and India is famous for its vast and beautiful tea gardens, and tea plantation was started in India by the Britishers in 1923, and now today India is the leading producer of tea. You can see some of the pictures of tea plantation, large estates of tea. The geographical conditions require hot and wet climate. Soil should be well drained, and distribution it is found in Assam, parts of Kerala, Uttaranchal, etc. Now, this is the coffee pods. You can see coffee beans, and coffee is another plantation crop, and it was originally grown in Ethiopia, and then it came to India. Britishers started growing it in the hills of Western Ghats the first. This is the estate of coffee, and this is the process how coffee is extracted and how it is made. The geographical conditions require hot and wet climate, moderate to heavy rainfall, well drained soil, and it is found in mainly in Kerala, grown mainly in Kerala, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Now, the major challenges of Indian agriculture India has been facing lots of problems in its agriculture, though it is the backbone of our country, but we have lots of problems. One is stagnation in production of major crop. Second is high cost of farm inputs. Then soil exhaustion. Fourth is depletion of fresh groundwater. Fifth is adverse impact of global climatic change. And then sixth is impact of globalization. Then providing food security and farmer suicide. Nearly 2 lakhs of farmers in different states of India have committed suicide between 2003 to 2008, and you can see some of the pictures. All these pictures came in the media, I mean newspapers and all the TV and all those news. Farmers is looking, it's a drought prone area and drought has affected, and farmers are looking for rainfall. Then all these problems, these are some of the problems that we have discussed, mentioned earlier, some of the pictures that are there. Now, even today, some of the problems that exist in Indian agriculture are some of the long-standing problems, and some are new and emerging problems, depending on the practices that we are using now. Now, in the election that happened, I mean recently, in that also one of the major challenges that the new government and that the coming government has to face is the agriculture distress that is there in the country, and this is one of the pictures of one of the newspaper sites, that is Economics Times, that it showed, I mean it gave that one of the agriculture distress is one of the major challenges that our government has to face now. So, this was all about agriculture of India. We discussed about types of farming, the crops grown, some of the conditions that we require for growing of some of the crops, then some of the problems that Indian agriculture face. You can contact us for if you have any problem. I hope you must have understood, but even still if you have any problem you can contact us. Thank you.